In today's episode of Watching the Watchers, we're talking about an Arizona blacklist for police. Liberal groups, other lawmakers, they want a list where police who have been found to be responsible for some sort of misconduct or some sort of integrity violation or some sort of overt or covert racism are added to this list. In criminal defense terms, we call this a Brady list. There was a case that went up to the U.S. Supreme Court. It was Brady versus Maryland, where the Supreme Court said that if a prosecutor or if the government has evidence that there is something wrong with the government's case, with the police officers, or with the evidence that might favor the defendant or might tend to show their innocence or not guilty, then that evidence needs to be disclosed to the defense, meaning us as defense lawyers. Well, the way that case has been interpreted by a lot of prosecutors' offices, and in particular Bill Montgomery's prosecutor's office here out of the Maricopa County Attorney's Office, has been a little bit loose. There's not really been a clear-cut policy on how they review these types of issues and then disclose it to the defense. So this article from the Arizona Capital Times, written by Dylan Rosenblatt on August 2nd, 2019, highlights that there are liberal groups and other lawmakers that are calling for a police blacklist. So this was in response to, there was a series of Facebook posts where police were getting involved in sort of some very colorful commentary about race relations and about how they patrol certain things. And people are concerned that those officers who have exhibited those sentiments are not being added to this blacklist or to a Brady list. We share that issue, and in fact, that's a huge reason why we started the Watching the Watchers segment, is because we believe that police are involved in a lot more misconduct than actually ever officially makes the list. It doesn't actually make the government's Brady list. When we're talking about a prosecutor's office, we have to remember, they control the material. They are representing the government. They are in close relationship with the police and law enforcement. They know when their officers are being investigated or under investigation a lot better than we do. We're not plugged into that system. So it's their responsibility to disclose that stuff to us. What we found is that in practice, they just don't do it. They think that it's not something that needs to be disclosed. They read their interpretation of what the Supreme Court said in Brady, and they say this conduct or this investigation doesn't fall within the purview of the requirements to disclose it to you. Or they'll say something along the lines of, well, this officer is still going through the formal process. They have not appealed. They have not concluded the investigation. And so even though they're under investigation, and it may later result in a problem that would be disclosed to you, at the current time it doesn't need to be disclosed. So as defense attorneys, we're standing there saying, well, we should know about this, and then we can decide, or we can let the judge decide whether they think this is an issue, whether we should be able to disclose this stuff to a jury, or whether this officer should be able to testify about certain things, or if the officer's on the stand, if we can ask them about that. Instead, we just don't know about it. We require a lot of help as the defense community. We will work with each other and share information from one lawyer to another. We also rely on journalism. A lot of journalists will find this stuff out through their own independent means, but the prosecutor's office will not disclose it to us in a case, like I said, for their reasons. They will think that it's not something that needs to be disclosed, or they'll come up with excuses as to why this is still pending and they don't need to give it to us. We've also found that there's not a lot of uniformity in between different prosecutors. So within one county, like the Maricopa County Attorney's Office, we'll see that there will be multiple different lists. There'll be one Brady list that one court uses, and another prosecutor has a list from last month, and another prosecutor has a list from last year. The problem with that is that when officers are added, it's not something that is uniformly spread across the entire agency. So there's a lot of outdated lists, and then there's just people who just don't make the list because it doesn't rise to what they believe or what they consider to be misconduct. So this article says that there were a lot of people who are very interested in seeing some sort of a list or some sort of more strict policy on this stuff. More than a dozen liberal organizations and Democratic lawmakers are asking Maricopa County Attorney Bill Montgomery to establish an exclusionary list. He rightfully, or he kind of adamantly is opposed to doing that, says throughout the article that he doesn't think that it would help ensure that there was a proper due process for the police, and that really it's just going to get in the way of what they need to do in terms of being police or being law enforcement agencies. So it says it's a search of a problem. The process is now like double jeopardy, so on and so forth. There's a lot in the article. It says that the county attorney must be a leader for police accountability, not someone who sits on the sidelines waiting for others to fix a broken system. That was a letter to Mr. Montgomery, hoping that he will actually do something and help get a more robust exclusionary list out there. In the meantime, we're going to keep bringing to light stuff that we find. If we find stuff that's disclosed to us, or if we find articles, we'll highlight it here. So this is the place to be if you want to stay up to date on any of these issues. We think that a police Brady list that's more robust, more strong, would help ensure that our clients and people charged with crimes are getting the due process that they need. They have a right to know when officers are under investigation or when there's problems with the government's case. Supreme Court says so. So hit subscribe so you can stay up to date. Thanks for watching.